Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, um, someday in September. I don't know exactly sure what day it is. I think maybe the 15th or 16th day of September. We are learning the eighth Perek, the eighth and final Perek of the Peah today. Baruch Hashem, this is the end of the second Masechta of Mishnayos. Only 61 more to go, and then we're done with all Shas. Today's shir is sponsored the Eloi Nishmas Aaron Nachman and Simcha HaKohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Brecha Sarah Bas Shmolei, B'nai Moshe ben Yosef, and Moshe Yitzchak ben Shrav Feivel, made the Shabbos Hava and Aliyah. As also for Shlema Ada Sarah Bas Lev, so Shar Chali Yisrael. Let's go. Um, the first Mishnah and in the Perek opens up with Me'emasai Kol Adam Mutarim B'Leket. Okay, so the Yaniyim went. The Yaniyim finished collecting the leket, the shech, the peah from the fields. So when can everyone else, all the other people, collect anything that's left over? Because leket, shech, and peah and ma'aserani are only for people who are poor. But when can the regular people go get? Everyone looks a good deal. Everyone looks for free. So when can the regular people then go and take this stuff? So the Mishnah continues, Mishiyelchu hanemushos. When the elderly people who are slow to who move slower than the regular poor people, the elderly poor people, when they've gone through the field and taken whatever was left over, then after they're done, then it becomes hefker, and anyone rich or poor can go and take whatever is left. But as long as the anim had a chance to go do it first. The Perek Olilus, what about by Perek and Olilus, which are the gifts from the vineyard? When can regular people take from that? Mishiyelchu hanirim bekerem biavo. Only after the poor people have gone through the vineyard in search of these gifts, and then they came back and searched the vineyard a second time. At that point, they are considered to have finished with the vineyard. And um, we do not say the same rule that's only after the elderly came, because people are more fond of grapes and they'll make a second trip and to figure it out. And the elderly also will come earlier because it's grapes and they like to drink wine. So they'll come first. So you don't make the same rule by the grapes that you do for the for the grain. And what about by olives? When do you open that up for everyone to take? Only after the second rainfall. Second rainfall is supposed to be around the 23rd of Cheshvan. And at that point, the poor people will assume that the Shikha and Peah were all taken away from the olive groves, and they give up hope of finding any more. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Hello, yesh ena moskin as they say him, ela la'achar Rabbi Yeshua." Rabbi Yehuda says he challenges that last ruling. He says there are some people who do not even begin to harvest the olives until after the second rain. So how can you make a rule that it's permitted to take the remaining olives after the second rain falls if people didn't even start the harvest yet? Ella Kadei Shiahei Ani Yotzi Lo Yahei maybe me. Arba Isaros. Rather, Shecha and Peah of the olives is mutter to everyone when the amount of the remaining gifts is so small that the poor person will go into the olive grove, will go out to the olive grove to collect them. He would be unable to bring back four Easter's worth. It was a value based. The Easter is a small coin, so 4 Easters is enough to buy 4 meals. which is about a day's worth of food for a man and his wife. So anything less than that is not worth returning for, and therefore they give up oath of, of, of collecting from that field anymore. Mishnah Bays. Okay, so now the question is, who can we trust regarding Leket, Shecha, and Peah? And we know that an Am Aretz is not usually trusted when it comes to the laws of Chumas and Maasros. So when someone Eretz Yisrael buys produce from an Am Aretz, the buyer must separate Chumas and Maasros, even if the Am Aretz already said that he did so. So now we're going to talk about Maleka, Shecha, and Peah and Maiserani, which, as we know, are exempt from Chumas and Maasros. So Nemanim al Haleka al Shecha al Peah b'Shaitan. So Ami Haaretz who are poor are believed to say that their produce that they received is Leket, Shecha, and Peah, and therefore it's exempt from Meiser, but that's only in the season, meaning during the harvest season when these gifts are left for the poor. Even though they're not trusted regarding Chumas and Maasros, they are believed to say that the produce that they have is a gift that is butter from Meiser, as long as it's still in the season. Meiser ani b'chol shnas, and they're believed to say about that the produce is Meiser ani throughout the year that Meiser ani is given. Meiser ani is given in the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycles. And therefore, if it's Meiser, they have the whole year that they can believe on that. But however, once the season is over, then they're not believed anymore because the ani is not known for storing his grain. So if he has it, then he has something in his possession that is likely not from Lekaship and Peah because he doesn't have a proper storage method. Uven Levi Nam Aliolam, and a Levi is always believed to say that his produce is Meiser Rishon, and that he separated Shumas Meiser from it. Right. Since Meiser Rishon is given every year, and the Levi is presumed to always have supply of it at all times, and therefore he can believe that his stuff is Meiser Rishon, and that he took Chumas Meiser on it. Ve'enan ne'emanin ela al darish b'nei adam noginke. However, the poor person or the Levi Am Aretz is believed is believed only if this type of produce is normally given as a gift. If you receive something that is not normally left over for the matnas aniyim or some like rare item, then no one's going to believe you. It doesn't work. Regular wheat, yeah. Fancy wheat or whatever fancy grain or some rare exotic thing is not going to be believed. Okay. Mishnah Gimel is the continuation of the previous Mishnayos that moving right along. Ne'emanim al hachitim, poor, the Amei Aretz who are poor, they're believed to say that their unprocessed wheat was collected as for Leka Shecha and Peah. But they're not believed when they tell you that the flour or the bread was such a gift because that's not the way it's distributed. They go to the field, they get the raw ingredients, and they don't get bread or flour, which is a very processed grain, as Leka Shecha or Peah. Ne'emanim al hasorim shel erez shel orez. They are believed to say that rice that's still in its shell, in its hull, is pater from meiser. They did not believe when about this rice, whether it is raw or cooked after it's been taken out of its hull. Pool. They believed to say that the whole beans are pater from meiser. But they're not believed to say this about crushed beans, whether they're raw or cooked. Because again, they're normally given to the poor while they are whole and they're not being processed. The exception to all these rules is by olive oil, which is they're believed to say that that was given to them as maisrani, because it is common to give maisrani from oil rather than giving it from olives. That was a common thing to do back then. The but they're not believed to say that the olive oil, which is made from forgotten olives, from shikha, because those olives are so few and far between that you're not going to get olive oil from that. Okay, going on to Mishnah Dalet. Ne'emanim al hayerachai. Hamiaretz who are poor, they're believed to say that the raw vegetables were given to them as ma'aserani. That's okay. That's the normal way of doing things. But they're not believed to when they say that the cooked vegetables was given to them, because again, ma'aserani is given from raw vegetables. In kain hayalo davar. He is not believed unless he has only a small amount of cooked vegetables. In that case, it could be ma'aserani. Shekain derech bal habayis liyos motzi melifas melafso. So it's common for a homeowner who forgot to set aside ma'aserani, if it was raw vegetables, to remove a few cooked vegetables from his pot and then set them aside. But that's only done for a small amount of vegetables. Which is, people make mistakes sometimes, but if he came up back with a whole big pot, then he would not be believed on that. Moving on to Mishnah Hey. Now we're talking about the distribution of Ma'aserani. Okay, how is it distributed? Ein pochasil aniyah begar michatzi kav chita v'kav sa'oret. When distributing Ma'aserani, a farmer may not give each poor person at the threshing floor less than a half kav of wheat or a kav of barley. Those are the minimums. Since the person usually eats 2 meals a day, and a poor person must be given enough Ma'aser honey for 2 meals, and all these amounts, a half kav of wheat or a kav of barley, is the amount for 2 meals worth of food. Meir says chatzi kav, the minimum of barley is a half kav. It's half of what the Tanakama said. Kav the chetzi kushman. The farmer may not give each poor person less than a kav and a half of spelt, the kav and a half. The kav grogeris, or a kav of dried figs, or mana devela, or a mana of pressed figs. So pressed figs are usually sold by weight, not by volume. Therefore, they are measured in manas. Rabbi Kiva Omer Pras. Rabbi Kiva says that the minimum for pressed figs is half a mana. Chatzi lo gayin. Farmer may not give less than a half a log of wine. That's a liquid measure. And Rabbi Kiva Omer Revius. Rabbi Kiva says that the minimum for wine is a quarter log, not a half a log. Revius Shemen. The farmer may not give less than a quarter log of oil. Rabbi Akiva Omer Shminis. Rabbi Akiva says it's an eighth of a log. Rabbi Akiva has been like cutting the Tanakama's shurim by half. It seems like. Usharka Paris, as far as all other produce, Amar Abba Shol said the poor person may be given enough of the produce that he can sell the produce and use the money from the sale to buy food for 2 meals. That reminds me of a joke I once heard about the poor guy who was applying for a job as a school custodian, and he says, and okay, they came out to a contract, they get to agreement, and they told the poor guy to here's the contract, sign your name, and the job is yours. And the guy said, I can't sign my name. I don't know how to read or write. You don't know how to read or write? You can't be a school custodian if you don't know how to read and write. So he lost a job. So he has $1 in his pocket. He goes outside and he goes to the store and he buys 2 tomatoes and he walks a couple blocks and he sells those 2 tomatoes for $2. Okay. And every day he takes the money from the day before, he buys more tomatoes and he sells them for double the price. So this goes on for about a month. And after a couple of years, now the guy has a mega tomato business, and he's pretty wealthy, and he has all the warehouses and the trucks and everything else, and it's a multi-million-dollar company after many years. And finally, he decides he wants to retire and sell the business. He goes. This is like 10, 15 years later. He's now worth millions and millions, and he goes to the lawyer's office to arrange the deal to sell the business. And they tell him, sir, okay, the deal's done. You have your buyer lined up. All you need to do is sign the contract, and you will be on your way with a check in hand. And so he said to the lawyer, sign a contract? I can't sign a contract. He's like, why can't you sign a contract? He goes, I don't know how to read and write. You don't know how to read and write? Do you have any idea where you'd be in life if you knew how to read and write? He's like, yeah, I'd be a school custodian. Okay. That was one of my favorite jokes. I always love that joke. Moving on, Mishnah Vav. Continuing with distributing the Ma'asrani. Mida Zu Amura B'Kohanim B'Levim Yisraelim. These minimum amounts of Ma'asrani that a farmer is required to give to each poor person at the threshing floor apply to all farmers, whether they are Kohanim, Levim, or Yisraelim. Because you would think that maybe if a farmer is a Kohen or a Levi, that they can give less because they don't have to give themselves. They that they don't have to give the truma or meiser to someone else. But but really that the Kohen, a Levi who owns the Levi Kohen must give meiser only just as the Yisrael must. Okay. Haya Matzil, if a farmer wanted to save some of his meiser to give to poor relatives or friends who are not on site when he distributes the meiser, can he do that? Because people come into his field, they're all coming, the whole public's coming. But he wants to make sure he saves some for his poor friend or his poor relative who needs help. The Nota Machsa, he can remove up to half of the meiser and save it for that. And he distributes the other half to the poor people who are gathered at the threshing floor. What? But the farmer has too little meiser to be able to give the minimum to each poor person who is there. So instead, he places all their main meiser before the poor people and let them divide it equally among themselves. He doesn't need to do it. Continuing with Mishnah Zion. Ein focusing the ani over mimakum mimakum. You do not give a poor person who is traveling from place to place less than mikikar betunja mi arba son besela, less than a loaf of bread that costs one punjon at a time and four cost sella. What does this even mean over here? So it's meaning that a poor person who's traveling through a town that the local chesed organizations, they have to give him this amount of bread, which is enough for 2 meals, which is the normal amount that people eat on a regular day. Um, so whatever the dollar amounts are, it's worth about 2 meals. Low no stin low Lina. And if he stays in the town overnight, then they must also supply him with his needs for the night, meaning a place to sleep, a bed, and bedding. Shabbos, if he's there in the town for over Shabbos, notice in no mazel shalosh shudas, and they must provide him with food for 3 meals rather than two, because of Shabbos to eat 3 meals. Okay, now we're going to talk about different charity funds. Mi sheyesh lo mazel shtei sudos lo yitom in a conflict. So someone who's a poor guy, and he's a traveler, he's poor, and he has enough food for 2 meals, he may not take food from the charity plate, because that is designed only for people who do not have enough food for that day. Okay, but then you also have the kupa. The kupa was to cover a family's meals for the week. Mazon arba sudos. Well, you tell me that kupa. So poor person who has enough food for 14 meals, which is 2 a day for 7 days, may not take from the charity box, because that's beyond what it was designed to do. It was only designed to provide 14 meals a week for a family. Interesting. Why is it 14, not 15? Because if you have 2 times 7 is 14, but you eat 3 meals on Shabbos, so that's 15. So why is it only 14? So you have a rule of Asay Shabbat Chachol Al Tizdarich Brios. You to make your Shabbos into a weekday and don't come on to other people. So you would say, okay, for the guy doesn't keep Shabbos, of course the guy keeps Shabbos. But during the week he eats 2 meals, and on Shabbos he can also eat 2 meals. So what's going to happen? He won't have Shabbos shittas. So others will say that no, it doesn't mean that, but rather the Shabbos shittas meal, which is like late Shabbos afternoon, can double for Lamal. He's going to have his evening meal of a Shabbos shittas, and then he'll skip his Lamal, which is the first meal for the next day. So altogether, you had 3 on. You basically had 3 on Shabbos and 1 on Sunday, and you still get to the same 14 meal. But then it's something that is considered Monday. The kupa nigbis b'shnayim was chalekas b'shlosha. So regarding the charity box, it's collected by a team of 2 collectors, because two collectors have a legal authority to tax the townspeople to contribute to the fund, and it must be collected by 2 people. And the money from the box must be distributed to the poor by a panel of 3 people. Since because the dinamamus is done with 3. Mishnah Ches, Mishiyesh Loma Stein Zuz, Lo Yito Leka Shicha Upeya Kamaisarani. Someone has 200 zuz. Zuz and a sella. Sorry, a zuz is the same as a dinar. He has 200 zuz. What's 200? Well, 200 is 1 more than 199. What's 199? The Rosh Tables of tzedakah. Sadi Dalit Kuf A equals to 199. Kuf is 100, Sadi is 90, and Dalit is 199. So if a person has more than 199 zuz or dinarim, he cannot take leket, shicha, peah, or nicerati. Because because at the time, 200 zuz was enough food and money for food and clothing for an entire year. Person who has this much money is not poor enough to collect gifts of the poor. However, if he has 200 zuz minus even a single dinar, so he has 199, and he qualifies to collect these gifts. Afilu elef noistilok achas hareza yito. In fact, even if they give him 1,000 zuz at once, he may accept them all. Since it's only a one-time gift, he may accept it, even though it will increase his assets far beyond 200 zuz. So now, how do you calculate? How do you calculate whether he has 200 zuz or not? How you mumshkanin the balchovo of the ksubas ishto? Person has 200 zuz. The part of it was designated to pay back his loans or to pay his wife's ksuba, and the money is already tied up for other obligations. So he can collect the Imana Saniya. And Mechayot also Livkar is based on his clay tashbisha. In addition, we do not obligate a person who's less than 200 zuz to sell his house or his utensils before he can take the Imana Saniya. Those assets are not counted when calculating the 200 zuz. And finally, test the last Mishnah of this Masechta. Mishi yesh lo chamish mezuz, who no say, no saying, behem areze lo yito. Someone has 50 zuz, which is a quarter of what we talked about the last Mishnah, but he does business with the money. Areze lo yito. He cannot take manas and since he's able enough to, since he's able to use his money to support himself, he's not eligible for tzedakah. So now we're going to end up this Masechet with this discussion about tzedakah and the consequences of abusing it. Anyone does not need to take tzedakah but takes it anyways. He will not leave the world until he loses his possessions and becomes dependent on other people. That's as a punishment for taking charity when he does not need it. He'll eventually need charity. Anyone who needs tzedakah but instead struggles to support himself and does not take charity, he will not die of old age until he becomes wealthy and supports other people with his own money. And on him the pasuk says in the Yirmiyah, blessed is the man who trusts in Hashem, and Hashem will be his source of trust. When he doesn't take charity, but he trusts in Hashem for his needs, then Hashem will respond and take care of his personal needs. And and similarly, when a judge who delivers a true judgment for the sake of truth and not for the sake of payment, he'll be rewarded by Shemayim. And any person who is neither lame, blind, or crippled, but acts as though he is crippled in one of these ways, so that he can. People have like you see these people like in the city, they're like panhandlers and they're begging for money. The homeless, crippled, and it turns out that they're driving fancy cars and putting on a show. It's a big problem. So he will not die of old age until he becomes one of these cripples. It's a major ayin hara. As it says that charity with justice shall you pursue. That's like seeking suck legitimately. And to wrap up this Masechta with a little about a judge, L'chol dayish l'keach shochad mates adin, and any judge who accepts a bribe, thereby corrupts the judgment, it's a major problem. Eino meisman azikna ad she eino kahush. He will not die of old age until his eyes dim and he becomes blind. Shnamar, v'shochad lo sikach ki shochad yaver pichet, as it says in Shmos, Mishpatim, I think it is. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see, therefore the judge will be punished, that he will be blind. Hajar Allah b'seches heya. A wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll start tomorrow at 9 a.m. Wonderful day.